long I've been working hard for a man, but now's the time to ditch this skin and be who I am. Some people just don't understand. You can keep your devil, I'll dance with Pan. For I will fly free on the wings of ecstasy.
Hello, welcome back to Witches of the Moon. I am Natalie, your Thursday hostess. This week's topic, we are discussing superstitions, where they come from, their origins, their role in the craft, and so on and so forth. I'm hoping to take a little bit different stance on it than my compadres. I'm actually recording this video early as I usually do, so I didn't have time to watch everybody's video. But I want to start with a definition of what a superstition is. A lot of people can tell you what a superstition is, like they can give you an example, but a lot of times people have a hard time actually defining what is a superstition. So according to the New World Dictionary, which you can find online, a superstition is an irrational belief that future events can be influenced or foretold by specific unrelated behaviors or occurrences, events. So basically, something that's completely unrelated has an effect on something else. According to them, the origin of the word superstition has two possible origins, both of them Latin. One of them is superstitio, I believe it is, superstitio, which relates to standing in awe of something. So I think that could very possibly be a good definition in terms of, if you think back to the ancient peoples and the development of the Latin language, a lot of times we didn't have a lot of control as human beings over what happened in the universe, okay? There were earthquakes, tornadoes, storms, tsunamis, that kind of thing, natural disasters. And I think perhaps some of these superstitions may have began as a way to feel like you sort of regained control or gained some sort of predictability to events that were unpredictable. And so that would be where that standing in awe of like Mother Nature, you're just going, oh my gosh, you know. And I think that that might be a good origin. The other origin that they listed was superstis, which is the Latin word meaning to outlive or survive. So if you looked at it from the perspective of, a lot of times we don't understand the origin or where these superstitions that we hold came from. Why do you throw salt over your left shoulder if you spill it? Which I happen to know that comes from the understanding that when you are looking at biology, if you study biology, you have ocular and you have auricular sinister and you have auricular sinister is the left side, okay? Dexter and sinister. It's the same for optical. If you work in optical, you have your OS on your prescription, stands for ocular sinister. OD stands for ocular dexter. So that kind of relates back to the early beliefs of the Judeo-Christians that God says, I will divide the goats on my left and the sheep on my right, and the goats were the bad ones, the sheep who followed were the ones that were going to get into heaven. And so that's where that term comes from. And I think that throwing the salt over your left shoulder was a recognition that we are composed of salt. Our body returns to salt, supposedly, or ash, and that if you spill it, you're basically recognizing that you don't want to be the bad salt, so you're getting rid of it over your left shoulder. I know that that's somewhere, something like that is the origin of that superstition. But a lot of these superstitions, there's a lot of, speculation on how they began. And again, I think that a lot of it was that it was seen as a way to kind of regain control over things that we really had no control over, or a way to predict when something bad was going to happen, because how do you protect yourself against the divine forces? Excuse me. And something to keep in mind too is that, remember, a lot of the gods throughout different cultures were seen as angry gods, gods that needed to be appeased or something like that. And so I think some of the superstitions may originate from that. A lot of our superstitions relate to numbers, and we as magical beings know that numbers are very mystical and have a very strong importance to us. Now, for us, I wouldn't consider it superstitious. We look at it as numbers contain information, energy, and powers. And so I think perhaps some superstitions may have spun off from practices of the craft, or things that are similar to the craft. I am so sorry, my throat is just, I don't know what's going on, but it's like allergies, drainage. Sorry, I really do apologize. So I think a lot of it probably relates back to that, to some of the early religious beliefs. And in fact, the New World Dictionary has an article online about that, and they say that some people see religious practices. Particular people who don't practice a particular faith may see the rituals or practices of some of the people that do practice that faith as merely superstitious. So, for example, I wear my religious jewelry. This is what I wear when I wear this one all the time. I wear my goddess pendant when I am particularly needing the intervention or the advice of the goddess. And I know that this isn't the goddess itself per se, but because I have consecrated this piece of jewelry and I've worked with it and I hold it close to my heart, I feel that it has been imbued with some of the energy of the goddess. And so I draw from that. They would see that as a superstition. Christians who wear crosses or wear St. Michael medals or St. Christopher medals when they travel, those are seen as superstitious. As a matter of fact, it just occurred to me, my father is a 32nd degree past potentate Mason. He's very high in the Masons. And they have this pin. I don't know if you can see it very clearly. It's got a little eye symbol up at the top, and then it's got the Masonic symbol, which is the compass and corner rule, and then it's got a little symbol down here. This particular device, or charm, amulet, whatever you want to call it, is called a blue slipper. And I am supposed to wear this anytime I travel anywhere. And not so much to protect me, but this was also a sign to other Masons. If I'm ever in an accident or I'm distressed and needing help, it's supposed to serve as a sign from one Mason to another that I am the daughter of a Mason and therefore should be treated as their own daughter or family member, female family member. So some people would see my wearing this as superstitious, especially if they don't know anything about the Masons or they know a little bit about the Masons enough to make them dangerous, so to speak, and they think that it's actually supposed to hold some power in and of itself. I think a lot of people understand, and I know this sounds silly, but to me, practical magic had a wonderful expression for this, why we wear charms and amulets, and I don't consider this superstitious myself. I consider it a visualization, a formulation of our energies, which we in the craft know that that's very important and carries a lot of weight in terms of sending out your intent and your purposes to the universe. I think a lot of people would see that as superstitious, but she tells the officer in the movie that his star, she goes, why do you wear this? You know, it's not going to stop bad guys in its tracks, but it's a sign to you. And so I think that some of the superstitions probably stem from that too, and a lot of people think that some things are merely superstitious and don't really serve a purpose. I don't think they understand that we as magical people, people who practice the craft, we understand that there is a meaning to that. And I think a lot of times people that wear them don't understand where the power of that symbol is drawn from, and so for them it may be kind of superstitious. So I can't go anywhere without my necklace. And again, going back to practical magic, when Jillian needs her tiger's eye. Oh, I need my tiger's eye. There's blood on the moon, and I think a lot of, whoa, I'm sorry, I just saw some serious cloud to ground lightning right outside my window here. That was a little, unnerving. Empowering. I think that, some of those superstitions, or what people would consider superstitions, stem from those kinds of things as well. I know that in terms of like numbers, like going back to the numbers theme, numbers for us hold a lot of power, but when you look at a lot of European societies and here even in the United States, you have a lot of what's called, I'm going to try to pronounce this right, triskaidekaphobia. Triskaidekaphobia is a fear of the number 13, and I don't know how many of you have noticed, but if you go into a building that's got more than 13 floors, a lot of times they skip the number 13. It goes from 12 to 14. there's no 13. And I'm not exactly sure, to be honest with you, where the fear of that particular number comes in. I tried to do some research to find the origin of some of these, and I really couldn't find a good origin for everyone's suspicion of particularly Friday the 13th, because we know that the calendar has been changed several times, so I don't feel it can be quite that old of an origin, frankly, in terms of Friday the 13th, because prior to, I believe, Alexander the Great, the calendar was different, so and it wasn't just Monday through Friday, or Sunday through Saturday, I mean, so, you know, I'm not sure where that one comes from, but triskaidekaphobia is definitely a superstition that I think a lot of people are aware of, but don't necessarily know the origins of. If you look at the Eastern cultures, like in Korea and China and Japan, they have a tetraphobia, which is the fear of the number 4. So that you'll see kind of similarities in there. And indeed, a lot of superstitions around the world have similarities. We did the evil eye just a few weeks ago, and I know that some people feel that the evil eye is superstitious, or a belief in the evil eye is superstitious. And so a lot of people say, oh, I don't believe in the evil eye. Well, just because you don't believe in it doesn't mean that it doesn't hold some weight or some power. You just might not give it its full power as somebody who recognizes it and does that. A lot of people, I think, feel that some of these superstitions are self-fulfilling prophecies. If you go back to the definition that I read at the beginning, or that I told you at the beginning, that it's an irrational belief that two seemingly unrelated events are related, then it does seem irrational, and it does seem like it's just a silly superstition. However, for some people, those beliefs hold such a strong visualization that you're sending that energy out, and that's why we as magical beings feel that it's a little bit more, there may be more to it than that. And it's not so much because the belief itself has any weight, it's your belief in the belief, your visualization of what may happen, and sending that forward that really does that. I was, excuse me, able to find a little bit of information on some of the superstitions surrounding mirrors, because I noticed that that tended to be a superstition that was pretty universal in belief, so to speak. So people from a lot of different cultures, different areas of the world, have beliefs about mirrors and the soul, because it is a reflection of you, but it's a backwards reflection. So a lot of people believe that mirrors might either capture the soul, contain the soul, contain part of your soul. That's why a lot of people, like I know that the Amish are forbidden to have mirrors in their home. It's seen as, one, a sign of vanity, that you're putting your personal looks above the inward person, but also they hold a lot of superstitions about mirrors and dolls also. If you've ever been around Amish people, you know that their dolls do not have faces. They believe that dolls that have faces can take on the souls of people around them, or incorporate the souls of people around them, or when people die, they can send their souls to these creatures. So if you're a big Chucky fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So their dolls do not have faces. They do not have mirrors in their homes. And it's not just for vanity purposes. They hold a very strong superstition that the mirror may take in part of your soul. And that's actually a very old superstition. Its origins are not exactly known. I do know that the Romans, the ancient Romans, held a similar belief that the reflection in the mirror was a reflection of the soul of the person. And so that's where the idea that if you break a mirror, it brings you bad luck comes from, because the Romans believed that if you broke a mirror, it broke the soul as well of the person. So they would grind the mirror up, you know, into little bitty shards so that there would be no reflective surface left. I did read somewhere in my research that slaves from Africa who were brought to the United States and to parts of the West Indies would submerge a mirror in southward flowing water, because they believed that that would wash away the bad luck from a broken mirror after 7 days. So it would have to remain submerged for 7 days. Now, what caught my interest about that particular superstition was the number of days that it required, because to me that almost goes back to a Judeo-Christian belief that in the creation that the number 7 holds power because it took God 7 days to create the earth. I don't know that I hold a lot of sway in that, but I do know that a lot of those people were very Christianized, or were Christianized as they were brought over. And so that may have been an origin of that belief. But it did catch my attention that the number 7 was very important. 7 years of bad luck, 7 days to wash it away. We know that the number 7 has some power, but that's because of the mathematical proportions that go with it. I just found that as an interesting little sidestep. So that was a twist on the origin, but it's still different cultures crossing over and sharing a similar result. A lot of times in places, mirrors would be covered if a person was in convalescence or in an illness, recovering from an illness, because they were afraid that in the weakened physical state, the soul may get up and wander, and they did not want that person's soul wandering into the mirror and becoming trapped in the other world. As you are very well aware, we do use scrying mirrors, and scrying mirrors are seen for us as a portal to the spiritual world. Now, some of these ideas of superstitions surrounding mirrors may have come from our earliest magical beliefs that the mirror is a portal to the spirit world. That reflection is a reflection of as above, so below. And so I think that perhaps that might have come, some of those superstitions might have really stemmed from scrying mirrors, or mirrors that were used for scrying, because there was some belief that only certain people should be doing it or what have you. I don't know the historical fact on that, but it seems to my logical mind that that might be an origin of that as well. It would be interesting to delve into that more and find out more about that. If you are interested in knowing a little bit more about some of the known superstitions and their origins, you can go to a site called brownielocks.com, brownielocks.com/superstitions, and they had some interesting listings of superstitions and their origins. The only thing I don't like about it is they don't really tell you how they sourced that information. So it's kind of, you can take it, believe it if you want, maybe do some more research on it. That might lead you to another nugget or another leaf that would lead you to something else. I enjoy research. I like knowing the origins of things, and especially cultures. I like the fact that there's so many things that are shared in different cultures around the world, like a belief in dragons. It's my personal belief that dragons were dinosaurs that just hadn't died out yet, and they had to come from somewhere. I believe very much in the She and in the Fae. I think that those stories must have had some origin somewhere in truth. I think if they're smart, they just separated themselves from us, because we tend to not always have everybody else's best interest in mind. We tend to look very much to our own. So, but some superstitions are related to that as well, like not dancing in a fairy circle. That would be considered a superstition, but we as magical beings know that that is important. Don't do that, because it's kind of disrespectful to the creatures that you cannot see. We believe very much in the idea that there may be things beyond what you can see, and a lot of people believe in things existing beyond our physical perception, but some people are very particular in what they believe, and it's funny to me how they'll curl their lip and sneer at some, your belief, but they have some of the silliest things themselves. I mean, this might be a person who does some special dance before they go out for, a bowling tournament or something. Sports holds a lot of superstitions, and people come up with their own little superstitions, things that they've found. Even B.F. Skinner, if any of you are familiar with B.F. Skinner, B.F. Skinner was a behavioral researcher back in the, I had to teach a class on him last semester in my PhD. 1950s, I believe, 1950s and 60s. He died not all that long ago, maybe 20, 30 years ago. But he was the reason that, he explained the reason why people stop at stoplights even when there's nobody else around. It's a conditioned response. You have classical conditioning, which was Pavlov. He would ring the bell and give the dogs a treat, ring the bell, give the dogs a treat. Finally, he would just ring the bell and the dog would salivate. Well, the dog was salivating in anticipation of the food, even though he had withdrawn that reward for the response. B.F. Skinner took that one step further and did what's called operant conditioning. And that means he's training you to do something. It's basically like training a dog. And he raised his kids this way. There was a lot of brouhaha because people felt like he was treating his kids like dogs. But he really believed that our behavior was conditioned. And he did a study with pigeons where he would he would just randomly drop them food, basically. And after a little while, Skinner noticed that the pigeons picked up what he determined were superstitious behaviors. That this one pigeon would turn in a circle 3 times and then start looking around like he was looking for food, whereas another pigeon would cock his head a certain way. Another pigeon had a certain pecking pattern, and they had somehow related those behaviors to the receiving of this random food. And it was very interesting to him, so he studied a little bit more on that. He was one of those people that believed that all superstitions were basically, I don't want to say hoodoo, but you know, that's an expression people use, that it's all hoodoo. That's what Skinner believed. He thought that every behavior we've ever had was a conditioned response. I don't necessarily believe with everything he had to say. I understand his perspectives. I see where, you know, I mean, obviously I stop at a red light even when there's nobody else coming, there's not another car in sight, and it's more out of the fear of the consequence. And that was Skinner's point, was that we don't necessarily act out of rationality, we act out of expectation of a reward, whether a positive or a negative one to our behavior. So, you know, it'd be my luck that there'd be a billboard there and a cop parked behind it just waiting for me to run that red light, and boom, here he comes and I get the ticket. So that's what causes me to stop. And I hate to say it, I think he's right on that one. But I think that he did a lot of discounting for individual thought and belief. And the fact that we come up with some of these superstitions, I think, is more just in the hope that it will do something, or it allows us to visualize an outcome that we want. And I think we as witches and practitioners of the craft and those who practice magic understand that visualization holds a very important key. And I think that that's really where a lot of these superstitions come from, is as a way to visualize a better response or a prevention to something or something along those lines. I hope that this video has been entertaining and informative. I understand that I've had some throat problems, and I really do apologize for that. If I had time to re-record it, I would, but this is my one shot. So there's my one shot. I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Please, please, please leave comments, give feedback. I would love to know if you are certain you know of the origins, or you have a good idea of where some of our superstitions may have come from. I would love to hear them, because I really think that those are kind of interesting things to study. I think it tells a lot about a culture. It tells a lot about people as individuals, what kind of superstitions they hold, whether you think it's hooey or you don't. So, thank you very much again for watching. We appreciate all the feedback and the interaction. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Happy 4th of July.